Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. We're going to do something different tonight, and it's going to kind of get back to my roots as someone that covers a lot of I covered a lot when I was writing on Pathios, a lot of stories about children with parents that do bad things and abandon them and sort of out there stories. And this one has been kind of moving around all over the place. And I'm not gonna lie, I spent hours today reading about it, reading stories on pretty much every outlet I could find, stuff from NBC. I dug into a lot of the local stories because I always feel like the local coverage of these stories is typically the most comprehensive and obviously the most sourced by the major outlets. And then the mother in this case, Kristine Barnett, she gave a very, let's just say, hard to believe interview with the Daily Mail today. So this is going to be a story that has a lot of twists and turns. It's kind of complicated. If you haven't seen it, it's in the headlines everywhere. But I did a bunch of digging, you guys, and something that nobody's been reporting is I found photos of her, Natalia, the little girl who was abandoned, and it appears that she has a new family now, and so she is, based on all of the photos I found of her, and I'll show you some updated photos as we get to the end here, she looks like she's doing really well. So I don't know that this is gonna be a really complex story. So let me just show you this is Kristine. And this is a story that is very, very, very hard to believe. So Kristine and Michael she is actually an author of a very well-known book in the autism work called Spark, a mother's journey into, here's the book. So she wrote this book in 2012 or 2013, and it's called The Spark, A Mother's Story of Nurturing Genius and Autism. And this is going to play a critical part in the story and why I think ultimately led to them abandoning the little girl. But she authored this book because her son, Jacob, has an extremely high IQ. He actually went to a very prestigious college in Canada in 2013 and got enrolled into a master's program. By 2014, he had finished his master's. He was 16 years old, and he's enrolled in a doctorate program today. Wild. So he has been featured on 60 Minutes. He's done TED Talks. He's autistic, but he is a genius. Super smart, really good at math and physics. He was published in academic papers as a child. And obviously, because of his autism, the family got a ton of attention, and his mother sort of became, I don't know, a spokesperson for the autism community. But this gets tricky. So here, how it all plays out. If you haven't even got to the story, let's start at the beginning. So Kathleen and Michael Barnett are married, and in 2010, they learn about a little girl who is from the Ukraine that has just come back into placement after being adopted from a family in Florida. So in 2008, the little girl named Natalia had been brought over from the Ukraine. During the process, she was with a family for 2 years, and then the family turned her over, and it was like determined to be a failed adoption. So they needed to place her with a new family. And so Kathleen says that she and her husband then decided in 2010, with the compassion of their own hearts, to take her on. The little girl, Natalia, they thought was 8 years old at the time, had a form of dwarfism that is extremely rare. I actually looked online at the type of it, and I'm not even going to try to explain, say the word. It's super complex, but it's so rare. There's only 30 cases in the world related to this form of dwarfism. The dwarfism can cause issues with their chest, their trunk, their extremities, cleft palates. It also can cause issues with the aging of the bones, and so getting a good age reading on the bones to determine an age of a child isn't very accurate with this form of dwarfism, I guess, because of what the bones prematurely age a little bit, and it's common for these people, according to the Rare Diseases website, which is through the National Institute of Health. A lot of these kids will develop osteoarthritis or arthritis as they get older. So she's adopted by the family in 2010. They already have 3 other boys. And so Kathleen says that she wanted to have this bigger family. And so she says that right off the bat, now this is sort of what her take is, and I'm going to weave in what the police say. Kathleen told the Daily Mail that after she brought Natalia home, she noticed within a few days that Natalia had pubic hair all over her nether regions. And she was supposed to be 6 years old. And so that made her think that she wasn't 6 years old. She said that she had she spoke in words that were more sophisticated than a 6-year-old, that she had clothing that was for an older people, that she was drawn to teenagers, that she wasn't identifying with children. Lots of interesting takes. And she says that her adoption with Natalia turned into a movie called The Orphan, which was a movie that was released in 2009, where a family adopts a girl who's playing a scam on people and is basically like an adult pretending to be a child, and then terrorizes the family and kills a bunch of people. And Kristine wants everyone to believe that this is exactly what Natalia did. Now, that's her take. Here's what happened according to the police report. So in 2010, doctors at the Peyton Manning Children's Hospital estimate through some scans and some like looking at her skeleton that she's probably around 8 years old, not 11 or not 6. And then in 2012, they do a skeletal survey of her, which determined that she was around 11 years old. But the issue here is that with her specific disorder, it's hard for them to properly age the bones. So according to the Rare Disease website, it said that they don't age the same as other people because of this kind of dwarfism. It also made me think of, and I don't know if this is true, but if she did in fact have maybe pubic hair at that time, maybe she had some sort of an endocrine disorder like precocious puberty, which can happen when a child goes into puberty early, which is not uncommon with growth disorders because it all comes up from the pituitary gland and issues with growth. So it could have been that, but there was no information on that, so that's all I got. So she says, Kristine says that in 2010 and on, that Natalia is a danger. So she told the Daily Mail that the movie The Orphan is exactly what happened. She would make statements and draw pictures saying she wanted to kill family members, roll them up in a blanket, and put them in my backyard. She was standing over people in the middle of the night. You couldn't go to sleep. We had to hide all of our sharp objects. I saw her putting chemicals, bleach, Windex, something into my coffee, and I asked her what she was doing, and she says, "I'm trying to poison you." She says, "The media is painting me out to be a child abuser. There's no child here. Natalia was a woman. She had periods. She had adult teeth. She never grew a single inch, which would happen even with a child in dwarfism." Maybe not true. And she says, "The doctors all confirmed she was suffering from a severe psychological illness only diagnosed in adults, and she was jumping out of moving cars, she was smearing blood on mirrors, and she was doing things you would never imagine your child doing." So she says that it was these behaviors that ultimately led her to getting her daughter psychiatric help. And during admissions into psychiatric hospitals, she begins talking about how she's lied about her age and she's not really a child, she's really an adult, and they actually have her committed into a severe severe psychiatric hospital for like severe cases. And Kristine says that she is diagnosed as a sociopath and a psychopath. Now, if she comes from the Ukraine, should be noted that children that come from orphanages can have different personality disorders. One of the more common that you would see, which would be it's like reactive attachment disorder, which can have some of the similar characteristics that she's talking about. But the problem here is that everything that we're hearing in the news from the mom here about this, and she's denying everything, mind you, is that her medical records are sealed because it's an adoption case. And in order for them to actually prove any of this, they're going to have to request the court to unseal these medical records. And they actually filed that request in court this week. So this is the crazy part, though, you guys. So in 2012, she decides that while at the same time, her son Jacob is starting to get a ton of notoriety. He is being picked up by 60 Minutes, and all of these other outlets are interested in interviewing him. He is super smart, and everyone wants to talk to him. And mom and dad, Michael and Kristine, are looked at as like these amazing parents and like the poster children for autism, of what an autism success looks like. The same time this is going on, she starts to write that book that I just told you about, which becomes like a bestseller. It is like reviewed by the Washington Post and other major outlets around the country. She becomes very well known for this book and starts an organization around it. She has a Facebook still from it. But at the same time all of this is going on, he gets accepted at a school in Ontario, which is extremely prestigious for physics and science. And he is accepted, and he's the youngest person accepted into this program at, I think, 15 years old into their master's program. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. So what do? According to the police, during the same time, they decide, I'll show you some of the pictures here. So Kristine and Michael decide to legally change this little girl's age. So here she is. There's Natalia when she lived with the family. There she is again. So what they did is they decided to legally change her name, legally change her age, and they get a judge to sign off on her actual age, get a doctor to claim that this girl is lying about her age, and somehow the judge is moved by all of this evidence and decides that the girl's age is not actually 11 but 22. And after they legally change her name, they basically abandon her and they place her in this house. They rent her an apartment in this house where she lives for a year. Mind you, she's a minor child, even though she's had her age legally changed. And then this is the letter that was obtained by a news outlet that hasn't been independently verified. This Indiana University Health would not verify when outlets actually reached out to them to verify if this doctor actually signed it. So we don't know that it's verified, but he wrote, "I'm writing on behalf of Miss Barnett and in reference to his adopted daughter. I know both Mr. Barnett and his ex-wife Kristine very well, and I first met Natalia in May of 2010 and served as her primary care doctor until 2012. She was previously adopted or fostered by at least 2 different families out of state. The birth certificate that was given to the Barnetts showed a date of 9/4/2003. The date is clearly inaccurate. Unfortunately, determination of her true age has been difficult. Records provided by officials in her native country, the Ukraine, are grossly incomplete, also because she has that form of dwarfism. Conventional methods of determining age are not useful. She has been seen by both an orthopedist and an endocrinologist. Neither specialist was able to help substantially with age assessment. Over time, it became increasingly apparent that this patient is substantially older than she claimed to be. She was seen by a dentist in 2011 who described her dentin on her adult teeth as adult. A neuropsychology evaluation in 2011 described her as having adult sexual development. During an inpatient psychiatric hospitalization in 2012, it was stated that she was at least 14 years of age. A normal menstrual cycle was documented during the hospitalization. She was also diagnosed with, at the time, sociopathic personality disorder, which usually does not appear until at least 16 years of age. Around the same time, she began admitting that she was over 18, and this was about 5 years ago. So they have said, so he goes on to basically say that she's made a career out of lying to families in order to get them to adopt and foster her. I don't even know how you make this up. So that letter, along with some other stuff, somehow convinces a judge to get her age changed to 22, even though that doctor literally said that he has no idea, like, based on medical tests, nothing's useful because of her disorder. So what happens then is they petition the court. The court actually changes her age to 22, and they put her up in that house in 2013, when theoretically, based on her birth certificate, she would have been 10 years old. 10. But according to bone estimates, 12 years old. So they basically put her into an apartment when she was 12 years old, and they left. Now, Kristine told the Daily Mail that during that time, she worked with the county, got her set up with Social Security benefits, had an agency that helped her with daily living skills, they got her enrolled into adult classes, and her neighbors that lived in that home with her took her on as one of their own, and sort of like took her in under her wing. Somehow the girl gets connected to the police and tells them in 2014 that her adoptive parents had just like left and gone to Canada, and she hadn't seen them since, and that they were paying for her apartment. And in May of 2014, she ends up getting evicted from the apartment because she doesn't pay rent, around the same time where the police get involved. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because in 2013, the police actually charged both of Kristine and Michael with child neglect and abandonment in Indiana. However, they are in Canada and have gone through a divorce now. It's like the tangled web, right? So she disappears, Natalia does. But it's not more that she disappears. It's more probable that because at some point she probably ended up back into the system, okay? And because it's an adoption case, all the records are sealed. So the prosecutor in this case and the police investigators won't comment on any of it. Now, in 2016, another family comes forward and says that they want to be the guardians of her. And it ends up that the family, Kristine and Michael, petition that they not become guardians because they say she's an adult, because they didn't want them to override this ruling that the judge had made that she was 24 at this point, or 25. Does this make sense? It's crazy. So somehow this family pulls out of all of this and doesn't take her on. And then that's the last known whereabouts, according to all of the media outlets, although I did follow it. So both mom and dad have been charged with 2 counts of neglect of a dependent. And what is interesting in all of this, and I'll show you some more of these pictures. So earlier, like later this week, an article was broken by the Washington Post that she had been arrested and started circulating, and it was Kristine took to Facebook and said, "Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be talking to anyone," but in response to the Washington Post photo of me supposedly being booked into jail, here's what is actually happening. I'm sick and devastated from the idea of any of these charges, and maintain that they are false charges. Friends and family, you decide if you are reading is real or fake for yourselves. I'm having to come in here to confirm I am not arrested, and my attorney states, and he's confirmed there is no warrant for my arrest. You want a mugshot, Washington Post, get the right girl, and also find an actual criminal. She was arrested shortly thereafter. And then she wrote below there, is anyone who knows information about what my true facts of this are, including other families who are affected by this scam with adoption, no details of the adoption or no actual facts of what happened of any kind, I would appreciate if you please speak to the proper authorities. The truth is that is what needs to happen. I know multiple other families who were financially harmed by this situation and are in my friends list. And then she tagged a couple other people. And this is part of the affidavit. So on the arrest affidavit, it basically states that Sheriff Goldsmith spoke with this little girl, and she said that she was originally from the Ukraine but came to the United States in 2008 through an adoption. Said she was adopted in 2010 by Michael and Kristine. Advised she had a form of dwarfism. Advised after being adopted by Michael and Kristine that she lived in Hamilton County with them for approximately 2 years. And she said that they left her in an apartment in Lafayette, Indiana. She was left alone in the apartment in Lafayette while the rest of the Barnett family moved to Canada, and said she had not seen the Barnetts since they moved to Canada. They then were said that she was familiar with Peyton Manning Children's Hospital records, which show on June 3rd, 2010. She was examined by Dr. Riggs. He estimated that she was approximately 8 years old. And then medical records also show that in 2012, skeletal survey completed at Peyton Manning Hospital estimated her to be around 11 years old. She believes said records to be credible and reliable as they were kept in the ordinary course of business. So on the 5th, that person again spoke with Michael and then on the 5th, the detective spoke with Michael Barnett, and he admitted that he and Kristine adopted her in November 2010, but he admitted that they legally changed her age from 8 to 22 years old in June of 2012. But he admitted that Kristine told others that she just looks young, and he admitted that she was actually a minor child when they changed her age. That's what he tells the cops. Now his attorney's like, he never said that. That was taken out of context. He did not say that. That was not said by Michael. So the crazier this gets, the crazier this gets. So then, okay. So anyways, there's this whole thing going on. They're both arrested now. They're both facing all of these counts, and they're both screaming that they're absolutely innocent. And like all the news outlets are like freaking out because they can't find this little girl. Well, I was digging and I was on this website, I think called Scallywagon or Scagabond. I don't even remember what it was. And they had located a woman on Facebook who appears to be her new foster mom, because photos that were obtained of her on there this was Natalia in 2018, and she's with like her either adopted sister and her little brother. And there's a lot more of these photos. Like, she's clearly been with this family for a few years. She's grown up. It's clearly the same little girl. And I blacked out the other ones because I wanted to try to respect the privacy here. So there she is again, and that's again with her sister and another little sister. There she is eating, and there she is with her family. So she's been with this family since at least, from the best I can tell, either 2016 or 2017. And if we go off of what her birth certificate says, she would be 16 years old, right? Yeah, 16 years old now. Now, if we go off what they thought she would be 18 years old. Either way, she would still be within the age range of being within the foster care system and being adopted. So, yeah. So based on the fact she clearly looks different in the photos, so it's clear that to me when I look at the photos here versus what she looked like as a baby, there she is again. She looks different when you look at the photos. I'll put them side by side so you can see them. So you can tell that she's definitely, I mean, if you look at them side by side here, she has grown for sure. She looks older, much older. She looks like a teenager now. And she looked like a little girl there. So I was almost like on the fence, like, do I believe this? Do I not? But the fact that her pictures and her photos, she looks clearly like she's gotten older and she looks like she's a teenager now. She looks like she's getting to become an adult. And so my thought was like, maybe this is what happened. And this is all speculation, but this is where I'm bringing into, after giving you this wild story, what my assumption is. And who knows if this is what it is, but I'm going to go with this. I'm going to say that they got a lot of attention with Jacob in 2012. A lot of people took notice in them. They became famous, and they had this little girl that had some emotional issues related to her abandonment and adoptions and being taken from the Ukraine, and she maybe had some antisocial personality disorders or some personality disorders from having a lack of affection as a child, which happens a lot for children that are in orphanages. They're not held enough. They don't learn how to attach themselves. They can become extremely destructive. They can have a lot of very violent outbursts. And it was maybe that her needs were not what the family could handle. And so instead of giving her up and putting her back into the system, they decided she was an adult. Or they did that so they could leave her and not have to deal with her anymore. So they could go on with their prodigal son. She could continue to be the awesome autism mom and become the famous family that they are today. Except they left a little girl behind that didn't fit into that package. That's my guess. And this poor... And I don't know if she really, so according to that doctor, Kristine, she did have a period, but this is the other thing. Like I said, precocious puberty is not uncommon with children that have growth disorders. I only know this because my son has a growth disorder with his pituitary gland, and several forms of dwarfism impact how the hormones work within the body. And so typically they're not getting enough growth hormone, and they're having issues with like other hormone related issues. So the same hormones that control your bodies, like thyroid and adrenal glands and growth, also control your sex hormones. And sometimes when people have a growth disorder like dwarfism, they can also have what's called precocious puberty, where they go into puberty early. And it may have been something where she was adopted and nobody got her to the right sort of endocrinologist to determine what was going on, and it didn't get diagnosed early enough to stop the puberty from happening. So, and the teeth and bones of this girl would also be different because of her size and because of her, with her disorder. So, I'm glad I could find the photos of Natalia. Fawn, I'm doing a stream, honey. What's up?
I eat for my mouth.
Okay, I'll get him for a second, okay? All right, you guys. I gotta get going. My son wants to eat, but I was glad I could find Natalia's photos. This is gonna be something that really I'm gonna keep following, because this sounds like, when I heard the mother's tale, I was like, there's no way. And now that I was able to actually find pictures of her and learn a little bit more about the disorder, I'm thinking this is more like she has a specific disorder that caused the puberty to happen earlier, which made her like, and once you go into puberty earlier, then your bones grow faster. I mean, it affects everything, which is why doctors try to stop it from happening. Now I'm saying, I don't know if she's diagnosed with this, but it makes the most sense to me. So, yeah, as she did, according to the mother, she said she was adding stuff to the coffee. Who knows if that's true, but that wouldn't be uncommon either with a personality disorder, especially with the RADs. But according to the photos and the mom who has her, it looks like she's super happy, and this mom seems to be very active in these kids' lives, and there isn't a lot of like drama on her Facebook page, so we'll see. Obviously I didn't name who that person is, and I'll just tell you that I found them on a website, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. I am going to go with the fact that this was probably a little girl that was adopted out of the Ukraine that had a lot of emotional problems and got abandoned and placed into a really crappy situation because the family didn't want to deal with her. And that's super sad, and unfortunately can happen when adoptions fail, but this is a very severe case of something like that happening. All right, you guys, let me know what your thoughts are. I'll be back later. Bye.